Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. God bless you. We're talking about Mama Bear Apologetics, Guide to Sexuality by this lady right here, Hillary Morgan Ferrer, and Amy Davison. And today, though, we're going beyond the book. We're going to talk about what's a subject in the book, but we're going to add information that's not in the book. We're going to talk about what's in the book and then expand on it today. And it's long. And so I'm going to cut this thing into two parts. The very first part, I'm going to talk about an illustration. And the second part, I'm going to talk about ideas. Okay, going beyond the book. We're going to talk today about woke culture, which is also called postmodernism. Postmodernism is the technical term for woke culture. And it's a way of thinking. It is a worldview because it's a view of the world. It's how they see the world. Well, Christianity is a worldview. Islam is a worldview. Atheism is a worldview. Woke culture can include some atheism. It can include agnosticism. Agnosticism means that, well, there might be a God, there might not be a God, but you can't prove it. Atheism says there's no God, period. Those two beliefs, either one of them, overlap postmodernism. And before we get started on ways of thinking, let's not get sidetracked. Ways of thinking are important, but what is at stake is what we believe. Ways of thinking justify why we believe this or we believe something else. And so the ways of thinking are very important, but what is at stake is what we believe in. For the Christian who has truly given their lives over to Jesus Christ, who is more than a nominal Christian, this is someone who has asked for forgiveness of all their sins, and they have received the forgiveness of their sins and been born again according to the scriptures in John chapter 3. These people have eternal life according to Jesus Christ. It is that belief that we are trying to preserve, the belief in the parents and the belief in the children. The woke culture, as in contrast, they are hoping, they're trying to establish that they are not guilty of anything because there's no God to judge them. And to justify that, they also say there's going to be no basis for a law that will condemn them coming to that conclusion. The woke culture justifies making their own reality while denying the existence of something called absolute truth. And God is absolute truth. So what is woke theory? We're going to talk about two items. In this first video, we're going to talk about the social construct. And in the second video, we're going to give a list of things that the woke culture refuses to believe. And we'll also discuss the flaws in the social construct. It sounds confusing, doesn't it? Well, it is kind of. Let's take a look at the social construct. This is a social construct. You're going to lose me. I'm going to put this thing in front of my face here for a while to talk about it. This is taken from Wikipedia, and I've made some very important changes to it. You see this large head right here and the little stick figure body down here with the little feet. There's a different illustration down here we'll talk about later. We're talking about this one first. And you'll notice that over here is something called reality. So the idea is in woke culture that reality out here, it comes into view of this person through the senses, in this case the eyes, sensory knowledge. They get to know reality through sensory knowledge only. What you can see, hear, touch, taste, smell, that sort of thing. And then once it goes through the eyes, it goes to the brain, and in the brain interprets what the person perceives. From that, they make a constructed reality within themselves. It's a personal reality. And then from that, they make decisions, they take actions, and I've added the word reactions here, or reactions, to make it complete. And then how they decide depends on what they say or do. And those actions then go out there and impact reality out there and change it in some way. Now, because this person thinks this way and comes to these conclusions, he's or she's not the only person doing this. There are a bunch of other people doing it, and that's why we have the second illustration down here. And here we have a whole bunch of people, boys and girls, men and women. And what it says is that society reaches agreements or mutual understandings about these perceptions, these constructed realities. And so because society reaches an agreement on this, that the brain is determining what is true, or what's real, I should say, what's real about gender, what's real about family, what's real about religion, and those sorts of things, then because society is processing all this in this manner, then the constructed reality in one person becomes a social construct for everyone in that society. That's a lot, isn't it? Well, let's go back to this first thing. I have added there's some flaws in this thing, and I'm going to give you the basis for the flaws. I've added some blue things here. Up on top, we have God's spirit, and on top I've added the word spirit inside human being, because human beings do have a spirit. And God does provide spiritual information, spiritual knowledge, so that the human beings are capable of receiving both sensory knowledge and spiritual knowledge. But the woke culture does not agree with this. I've added that because of that situation. A second thing I want to talk about are these icons over here. On top, this is an apple representing education. Next to it is a gavel representing politics. Underneath that is a microphone representing news media, journalism. Underneath that is a television screen, a movie screen, a laptop, and down here below is an F with a book for Facebook. And Facebook I'm using to represent all social media. What the woke culture is not talking about is the fact that what's ever real out here, these institutions get first crack at it. They get to know about it first. And then they choose what to accept and talk about with us, and what things are not important, or things they would rather not talk about for some reason. And those items about reality are excluded from us by these institutions. Let's take the news media, for instance. It's obvious that they choose what to report and what not to report. Once they report it, they'll tell you their opinion about it. And then that's what you get to see, what I get to see. And so the woke culture, because there's such a broad agreement among all these, in all these areas of our society in America and Europe especially, South America as well, Australia as well, and in, frankly, I wouldn't call it woke culture in communist countries, but it is definitely true that these things are a filter of reality before we get to see it, before we get to hear it, before we get to know about it. So what we're getting from woke culture is their version of reality, not our version, not what we might think is reality. Okay, well, you have here the basis of our discussion for the second thing. Right now we've used about 10 minutes, and we'll talk about the flaws in this way of thinking, and we'll talk about the things that the woke culture cannot afford to believe in, that we as Christians do believe in. We'll talk about that next time.